Hi, this is Wilfredo de Jesus, and we're looking at chapter 3, or week 3 rather, and also looking at chapter 4 and 5 of the book of Michael Worth. We're talking about leadership theories and some of the things that the difference between the different theories. Well, first we have to establish what is a leader. Um, and there's been many debates, as I read in the books, regarding is that something that is taught? Is that is something that is caught? Can you be born just being a leader and then others try to go to school and have different outcomes? Well, my position is this, that number one is that we need to understand that leadership at the end of the day is influence, whether it be in a nonprofit organization, whether it be in a local church. Leadership has to be, at the end of the day, influence. And then with that influence, one is able to carry out the vision, the mission of that nonprofit organization. You know, when you look at an executive leadership, there's different roles that fit into a person who's an executive director of a nonprofit organization. For instance, here at New Life, we have different 501c3s, different nonprofits, and each one of our executive directors of ministries are different. Some are more charismatic, some are more laid back, some are more, organized than others, but they are effective in their ways. And I want to just talk about two different types of theories of leadership that we found in Michael Worth's book. And one would be charismatic leadership, and the other one, transformational leadership. I want to just share this input regarding transformational leader. Um, I like what John Maxwell says in his book. There are millions and millions and millions of leaders, but there are only hundreds of transformational leaders. When you think about a transformational leader, you think about Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison. When you think about a transformational leader, you think of Dr. King, fighting against the laws of Jim Crow. You think about Mother Teresa, who is a transformational leader. No doubt you think about Jesus Christ, who is a transformational leader. And those who are transformational leaders are people who have influence and have transformed not only their community, but the way we look at the world. And Maxwell says there are five things that you need to know about a transformational leader. In other words, a transformational leader is someone who will see something that others don't see. A transformational leader sees things that others don't see. And that's the ability to differ between a person who just manages, right? Manages the staff, manages the money, but a transformational leader, they have vision, they have mission, they move forward. So a transformational leader is someone who sees things that others don't see. Number two, the other thing I've learned about transformational leaders is they say things that others are not willing to say. And that's what's going to separate you. And when you're willing to take that posture and that position, that puts you in that level. So you're willing to say something that others are not willing to say. You see things that others don't see, right? A transformational leader feels things that others don't feel. You look at everybody in history, from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Mother Teresa, John the Baptist, Paul, the Apostle Paul, Corrie ten Boom. These people were willing to say things, feel things, see things that others did not see. Another thing about transformational leaders that I've learned is that they believe what others don't believe. Here in Chicago, when we were looking at some properties, I was looking at properties that were deteriorating, and many of some of our deacons back in the day felt that these buildings were no good 10, 15 years ago. But irregardless, I was able to believe that this building can serve as a place of ministry if we were willing to invest the monies to transform um, these buildings that are deteriorating. And thank God we did. We purchased them, and today they're worth more than what we paid for them 15 years later. So a transformational leader is willing to see things, say things, believe things, feel things that others don't feel. A transformational leader does things that others don't do. You know, Dr. King marched. He was able to go to prison, um, did things for other people. Mother Teresa taking in the orphans and taking in the lepers. Um, when you are a transformational leader, these are things that you're willing to do. And in the book, he talks about that some people think about that a transformational leader and a charismatic leader are essentially the same. And I agree with Wirth that they're totally different um, styles of theories, if you will. One that's willing to give vision, mission, and the charismatic leader has a way. In the book, he talks about an overall view of the charismatic leader has a way of you know having this disposition about himself or herself. He says here, the charismatic leader says, the leader advocates a vision that's different from the status quo, and but still accept to be a follower. The leader acts in unconventional ways in pursuit of the vision. The leader engages in self-sacrifice and risk-taking in pursuit of the vision. The leader displays confidence in his or her ideas and proposal. You almost see like they overlap, but they're totally different. I mean, I know charismatic leaders that are sanguines. They are they're out there. They love to be the center of the attention, but it doesn't mean they're transformational leaders. Nothing bad. It's just two different styles, two different theories that we're learning about people. Um, who when you think about somebody in the Bible who was a transformational leader and a charismatic leader, uh, you definitely have to go David. David, no doubt, playing the harp, was one who seemed to be charismatic, and people were attracted to him and his leadership. Um, you look at someone like Jacob. Jacob, who um, was a person who had leadership, but wasn't really charismatic. And so when you think about those two theories, you've got to at least come to the conclusion that there are people who are very charismatic. They can be very influential in their lives, but it doesn't mean that they transform a village. They don't transform a community. They may have followers that they follow because of that charismatic, but it's much more. Um, there's a conviction that comes with being, in my opinion, being a transformational leader. He says here, Wirth says here, is that the leader displays confidence in his or her ideas and proposal. The leader uses visionary and persuasive appeals to influence others. A charismatic has that. They persuade people with talks, but a transformational leader also persuades, but with action. I don't know if that makes sense, but how I understand the different theories is that way. Um, Dr. King never held a public office in his life, right? But he was able to persuade people with his actions. And I think sometimes when I look at the world today, we see so many charismatic leaders, but they lack action. And I think that's what separates the two, is the one that's transformational is in the front lines. The one that is charismatic seems to um, people fall in love with who they are, probably more than the vision and the mission. And I think that's the separation of the two, and when it comes to the two theories. And we've got to be very careful in the world that we live in today. How many charismatic leaders have caused death to their followers, and they probably themselves were not willing to sacrifice? How many pastors today are very charismatic, but they lack action to what they are calling others to do? And I think for me is where we have to look at the style of Jesus Christ, who was very charismatic, but was very transformational. Can those two exist in the life of an individual as he or she leads a nonprofit? Absolutely. I think you're able to be charismatic, but also transformational. But you got to also look at it from the set of lenses that they're different. Just because you're charismatic doesn't mean you're transformational. And one's going to require more sacrifice than the other, in my opinion. So as I look at this chapter 5, I'm dealing with executive leadership. These are the two theories that comes out to me as I compare the different theories. One of the questions that you had was describe an influence, a leader's influence in an organization. I think that the leader, an organization rises and falls on the leader. It's just, regardless, you look at it in baseball, you look at it any sports, you will see that when the team is not producing, the first thing they do is they fire the coach, because organizations rise and fall on the leaders, whether it be a church, whether it be a nonprofit. They have an enormous influence. And I already told you that leadership is influence. And you got to be able to get your people from point A to point B, and an understanding the vision and the mission of that organization. When you govern and managing people, because there's people who manage systems and structures and they do well, but it doesn't mean that they can lead well. They just means they manage well. And I think sometimes we hire people to manage a particular department, and we think we can have them lead and have influence on those people. And we got to understand that there are those who can manage a 501c3, but cannot galvanize support, financial support, and go out in the world and be able to speak on behalf of that organization and try to generate income. So you have some people who have a gift in overall governing and managing, and but doesn't mean that they can generate funds for the organization. So we've got to make sure that we put people in the right place as we open up a nonprofit, that you have the right people who can do fundraising, who can lead staffing, and be able to have the influence that you need to achieve. So let's go back at it again for a moment. When you talk about executive leadership, the two theories that I think is charismatic and transformational. Two different theories and styles. They can seem to overlap, but they must be understood differently. Just because you're very charismatic, it doesn't mean you can lead people into battle. You can persuade people, but to go into battle is going to require someone like a Dr. King marching on the street. And so I think those are the two things that I wanted to share with you guys today regarding the different leadership theories. Thank you, and God bless you.